Happiness is not by chance, but by choice. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to share something deeply personal, something that may change the way you view happiness forever. You see, we often live our lives believing that happiness is something that happens to us, something we stumble upon when life finally falls into place. We tell ourselves, I'll be happy when I get that job, or I'll be happy when I find the right person. But what if happiness isn't something you wait for? What if happiness is something you choose, something you create, even in the middle of chaos? Today's story is about one man who discovered that truth the hard way. This is the story of Ethan, a man who discovered that happiness is not a matter of chance, but a choice. Ethan was just like so many of us, chasing goals, collecting moments, and waiting for the perfect day to finally feel alive. He worked long hours at a job that paid the bills but drained his spirit. Every morning, he woke up hoping something extraordinary would happen. But day after day, it was the same routine. Rush to work, scroll through social media, compare his life to others, and wonder why he always felt empty. He saw pictures of people traveling, laughing, living their best lives, and each time he whispered to himself, maybe one day that'll be me. But one day turned into 1 month, and 1 month turned into 1 year. And nothing changed, not because the world refused to give him happiness, but because he kept waiting for happiness to come to him. One rainy evening, Ethan sat alone in his dimly lit apartment. The city lights flickered outside, but his world felt dull and gray. His reflection in the window looked lost, eyes that had forgotten how to shine. He stared at the coffee cup in his hands, cold and untouched, and asked quietly, "Why can't I just be happy?" The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. And that's when the realization began to dawn on him. He had spent his entire life outsourcing his happiness to circumstances he couldn't control. He had made happiness conditional, tied to success, validation, and approval. He had built his peace on the shifting sand of someday. That night, as the rain whispered against the glass, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He whispered, "I don't know how yet, but I'm going to stop waiting. From now on, I will choose happiness, even if nothing else changes." The next morning, the world looked the same, but Ethan saw it differently. The sky was still gray, but it felt softer somehow. The air was still cool, but he noticed how fresh it smelled after the rain. For the first time in years, he didn't reach for his phone. Instead, he sat by the window with a warm cup of coffee and just breathed. It was simple, it was ordinary, but it was enough. That was his first choice. From that day, Ethan began making tiny, deliberate choices that shifted his world. He smiled more often, even when he didn't feel like it. He walked to work instead of taking the bus, just to feel the morning sun. He began writing down 3 things he was grateful for each night, sometimes as small as a good meal, or the sound of laughter from a stranger. Slowly, his focus began to change. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. The problems didn't disappear, but the heaviness began to lift, one intentional choice at a time. Weeks passed, and Ethan noticed something remarkable. The same world that once felt cold and monotonous now felt alive. The streets he had walked 1,000 times before seemed brighter. The people he used to ignore, the barista, the security guard, the neighbor he barely greeted, now felt like part of a living, breathing world he was actually connected to. His job was still demanding, but he approached it differently. Instead of dreading the tasks, he focused on what he could learn. Instead of complaining, he found moments to be thankful. He started seeing happiness not as a reward for perfection, but as a practice of presence. Every morning became an opportunity to choose how to see the day, and every night he ended with gratitude for the moments that made him smile. Months later, Ethan stood again by that same window where his journey began. The rain fell just like it had that night, steady and soft, but he wasn't the same man anymore. He looked at his reflection, and this time, he smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile you fake for a camera. It was the kind that comes from peace. He realized that the world hadn't changed, he had. the truth had been there all along. Happiness was never about what he had or didn't have. It was about how he saw what he had. It wasn't about everything being right. It was about choosing to feel right within himself, even when things weren't. That day, Ethan understood that happiness wasn't a destination waiting at the end of struggle. It was a daily decision, one that could only be made from within. Ethan's journey is the story of so many of us. We spend years waiting for the right time, the right job, the right partner, the right sign. But life isn't waiting for us. It's happening right now in the smallest of moments. Happiness doesn't knock on your door once you've achieved enough or earned enough. It shows up when you decide to stop waiting. Every moment presents us with a choice between gratitude and resentment, between hope and despair, between joy and fear. And each choice shapes the world we live in inside our hearts. Happiness isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to find light even when it's dark. It's the wisdom to smile even through tears. It's the power to say, I still choose peace, even when life feels chaotic. There were still days when Ethan struggled. He faced disappointments, losses, and moments of doubt. But this time, he approached them differently. He no longer saw challenges as punishments, but as opportunities. He no longer allowed setbacks to define him. He realized that happiness was not about avoiding the storms, but learning how to dance in the rain. When people hurt him, he chose forgiveness. Not because they deserved it, but because he did. When things went wrong, he chose to look for lessons instead of blame. And with each choice, he became lighter, freer, more alive. His happiness wasn't fragile anymore. It wasn't dependent on good days or bad days. It was rooted deep inside, unshakable and real. One day, life tested him again. Ethan lost his job. The same job that had once drained him was suddenly gone, and for a brief moment, the old fear crept back. But instead of panicking, he took a deep breath. He sat down, closed his eyes, and whispered, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." He had learned that while he couldn't control what happened, he could always control how he responded. That single mindset shift turned crisis into clarity. He decided to see this loss as a chance to start fresh, to follow something meaningful. He began sharing his journey with others, writing, speaking, helping people who felt the same emptiness he once did. The more he gave, the more he received, and soon his life began to bloom in ways he never imagined. Ethan didn't just change his life, he inspired others to change theirs. People around him began noticing his peace, his joy, his calm. They asked, "What happened? What changed?" And he smiled and said, "Nothing changed, except how I choose to see everything." That answer became his life's philosophy. He taught others that happiness isn't about getting everything you want. It's about loving everything you have, even as you grow and evolve. It's about choosing to see beauty in imperfection, hope in uncertainty, and strength in struggle. The more people heard his story, the more they realized that happiness wasn't out of reach. It was already within them, waiting for permission to shine. And now, I want to speak directly to you. Maybe you're like Ethan was, waiting for something to happen, waiting for life to finally feel good. Maybe you've been telling yourself, "I'll be happy when." But the truth is, happiness isn't a future event. It's a present decision. You can choose to see light in your current situation. You can choose gratitude over comparison, growth over fear, peace over pressure. You can choose to let go of what you can't control and hold tight to what you can. Your perspective, your effort, your heart. Life will never be perfect, but it will always be precious if you choose to see it that way. So the next time you wake up feeling stuck or uninspired, remind yourself that happiness doesn't have to wait for the perfect moment. It begins the second you decide that this moment, right here, right now, is enough. Take a deep breath, look around, and find one small thing to be grateful for. Maybe it's the warmth of your coffee, the voice of someone you love, or simply the fact that you're here. Still breathing, still trying. That's what happiness truly is. The act of noticing life as it happens and choosing to embrace it with open arms. Because happiness is not by chance, but by choice. It's not luck, it's intention. It's not something you find, it's something you create. So stop waiting for happiness to find you. Stand up, open your heart, and choose it today. Choose it in your words, in your thoughts, in the way you treat yourself and others. Choose it in every sunrise and every challenge. Because when you start choosing happiness, life starts choosing you back. You begin to attract peace, kindness, and opportunities that mirror your inner state. You begin to realize that you are not a victim of circumstance. You are the artist of your own experience. And with every choice, you paint a brighter, more meaningful life. Thank you for watching this video, for taking this journey, and for reminding yourself that happiness is something you can claim right now. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that you have the power to shape your own joy, then I'd love for you to join this growing community of dreamers, doers, and believers. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel for more stories that will uplift, inspire, and awaken your spirit. Because your happiness matters, your story matters, and it all begins with one simple, powerful truth. Happiness is not by chance, but by choice.